Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Tim Andersen here, the Appraiser's Advocate, and we are doing another edition of Movers and Shakers with Brad Bassi, SRA. Brad, how are you on this fine day?
Well, I'm doing pretty good, Tim. Thank you very much. It's been a interesting start to the morning with having the two dogs chasing a coyote on my pastures. So it was a
Oh,
good
I,
start
I,
to an
I
early
hope,
morning.
did they catch the coyote?
Fortunately not, because it would have been the old story of the dog chasing the car and all of a sudden it caught the bumper and didn't know what to do
I
with
didn't
it.
know what to do with it. Okay. And by the way, Brad, don't put that hat down anywhere near me because it might not be there when you get ready to leave. Brad, you're an appraiser. You've been an appraiser for a number of years. Well, first of all, you live in what, Hemet, California?
I live in a town called Temecula, California. It's south from Hemet. It's south and a little bit east. I'm kind of about an hour and 15 minutes north of San Diego, and depending upon traffic, anywhere from an hour and 45 minutes to 2 days from downtown LA, depending upon traffic.
Okay, and count the 2 days as a blessing.
Yeah.
All right, now obviously you deal in residential properties. You're an SRA, but you tend to deal in ranch properties and large acreage properties and expensive kind of properties. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir. I've been doing this 20, almost, let's see, 28 years. Yeah, 28 years now. And I guess probably the last 15, 18 years, I've specialized in residential vacant land, horse ranches, custom homes, manufactured homes on acreage, and the more rural type properties. I'm just not that price competitive with those people that do the standard track stuff and work with AMCs and that type of thing. So I have a fairly large private party business and litigation work as well.
I was going to say you also do legal work too, do you not?
Yes, sir.
Now, um, you've got a niche and you just went through it. Now, I know that you didn't start in appraising, so that everybody knows you and I know each other, and we've chatted off camera numerous times. So go ahead and tell us, if you would, you didn't start out in appraising. Where did you start out? What is your educational and your job background?
Well, originally I was born in a small town in Missouri, and then I was raised in a small town in Kansas, a small ranch and farm rural area, and played baseball and a little bit of baseball in high school and a little bit of baseball in college. Uh, Actually, I should say I sat on the bench, did that fairly well, and then ended up going through undergraduate work at Arizona State, which was my final undergraduate work area. And I left school right before I finished my last couple classes, and I went into commercial offshore oil construction. And that's a whole nother long story, but I had a cousin that was involved in marine salvage and I had a background with it. So I decided maybe school wasn't what I wanted to do, got into commercial offshore oil construction, did that for a couple of years, got hurt, decided maybe that really wasn't such a good idea, and went back and finished up my undergraduate degree at Arizona State, and then subsequently then tailed right into Northern Arizona University, and I finished with my master's degree in the late 1979. I finished my master's degree.
So you refer to your master's, meaning you have an MBA.
That's correct. Yeah, I have an
Okay.
MBA, and then from there, I went out and was employed in the defense contracting industry. Worked for a large defense contracting company for a couple of years, then got hired by another manufacturing company in the defense industry, and they ended up having 10 different divisions, and I was in their sales group and ended up going through their sales situation and ended up being a VP of sales. And in 1992, early 92, the chairman of the board and I had our final disagreement, and I was asked to head west, shall we say. And so from there, I came out. I had a good guy that was best man at my wedding. I went out, visited him for about a week. I thought I'd go out there and clear my head. And his younger brother is an SRA and is a residential appraiser. And we were out hanging out one day, and he said, "What are you going to do now?" And I said, "I have no idea, but I know what I'm not going to do." And he said, "Well, hey, why don't you be an appraiser?" I went, "Okay, well, what's that?" And so I ended up following him around the next day and watched what he was doing. And he and his business partner were gracious enough to open up their books and let me kind of take a look at what their business side of things were. And from there, then I called my wife and said, hey, I'm going to spend a couple more days out here. So I ended up spending about another week, and I just tailgated. I followed him everywhere. I held on to the smart end of the tape, as he told me. And that's how I got my first indoctrination into it. And then I came back out to California, where I live now, and got into a class and started taking this was right as licensing was just getting off the ground, and everybody was still kind of running around with their hair on fire trying to figure out what was happening. And so I ended up going through the classes, getting some hours underneath my belt. That led to a contact to my first mentor. And then I spent a couple of months with them. And if everybody, those of us with gray hair, remember the early 90s was a little bit of a sticking point in the real estate market. Things were starting to have a little bit of a hiccup. And my first mentor had a family appraisal business, and they were trying to keep food on the table for everybody in the family. It's in the shop. And I could see what was going on. And I just told him, I said, look, we got to do something different. I got to get out of here because y'all are having a hard enough time keeping the doors open and keeping your own family fed. You don't need to be worrying about me. So I ended up leaving there after a couple months, and then got an opportunity who became another great mentor for me, who had an exclusive agreement with a large, I should say, a small regional bank in the West LA area. And so I commuted from Temecula up to the LA area and stayed up there 4 days during the week. And that's really where I learned about custom homes, high-end properties, acreage. I did work in Malibu. I did work in Brentwood, Palisades, Beverly Hills, Beverly Glen, Beverly Park, south of Encino Boulevard, for those of you who are familiar with the area, and where some of the movie stars and music recording people hang out at. So I got a pretty big background from the high-end custom home stuff, and that's kind of what I decided to do here. We had ranch properties out here. I was familiar with large parcels of land. I was used to walking them as a kid. And so I kind of took my background from being in a rural environment, my knowledge of horses and having been around horses as a kid, and then spent probably about 11, 12 years of working with Mustangs, helping out a couple of trainers trying to get Mustangs ready to saddle broke so they could be better at auction for the BLM group. And so I just kind of combined all of that and started looking into ranch properties and investigating and interviewing agents that did a lot of that type of property work. A lot of the custom home agents, I started going on caravans with the custom home agents in the areas that out on both sides of the interstate freeway is kind of the dividing mark. We have big, large custom home areas on both sides. And that's really how I kind of got my foot in the door. I finished up with my mentor in 95, 96, and then struck out on my own, and haven't looked back. I've been on my own ever since, as a single lone wolf, if you will, type shop. And it's been a good career, and I've enjoyed it. It's gone well, including all of the insanity that's gone on with the business. It's turned out to be a pretty good situation for me.
In speaking of your background, obviously, again, you grew up on a ranch and you were around horses, etc. So taking your educational background, did you find it an easy transition into residential real estate appraisal, especially high-end and custom real estate appraisal, or was it a complete challenge, and did you feel as if you were starting all over again?
Well, from a business standpoint, yeah, it was starting all over again. I think my sales background and as my wife likes to say it, I'll be dead in about 3 months and I'll still be talking. But I think my sales background was a big help for me, because I was able to interact with the agents and have business conversations with them. And it wasn't about, trying to get their business. It was more about understanding, where are their pain points? Where are their issues? What things were they running into? What things could I help them with to help them get an understanding of what was going on? And because of what I had learned from my mentor up in West LA, I felt like I had a pretty good, I felt like I had something to bring to the party. So it was definitely starting over again, but it was once I learned the nuts and bolts of, you know, the types, you know, the way to measure a home, the types of things to look for, you know, and then I created with the help of my mentor, I created a checklist for myself on questions to ask the property owners about their flooring and what, you know, their carpeting and where were all these things imported from and where did the fixtures come from, and tell me about your appliances, and spending time with these people, because they're, you know, 2, 3, 5, 10, $20 million mansions. You know, they're not interested in somebody coming in and spending 10 minutes and heading out the door. They really want to tell you about their castle. And in some cases, they actually almost were a castle. So, you know, it was having the ability to interact with the borrowers and the property owners, having the ability to interact with sellers and the agents, not being intimidated by that standpoint, because my previous lifetime, I had 2- and 3-star generals trying to beat me up at the Pentagon. So, you know, it came natural for me that I just had to learn the nuts and the bolts of appraising and understand the theory of substitution and understand, hey, how do you look at this marketplace? And then how do you define market areas? And once I got my arms around that, then it worked. It worked out pretty well for me, but it took time. I probably fell and scraped my forehead, I'd say probably for the first 5, 6 years. And then after that, I started to get in the hang of things.
Talking about the experience you got, you had obviously appraised a whole lot of real estate throughout Southern California, and you're obviously doing fine. You're not having any trouble getting work. You're dealing with expensive properties. Why all of a sudden? What was it that woke you up one morning and said, "Okay, I'm going to go to all the crap and hassle of getting an SRA"?
Well, uh, for those that can't really see me real well, let me take this off and show you that I am over 30.
Barely. I know how old you are.
Yes,
Over 30,
clear
but barely. Yeah.
Yes, barely over 30. Um, it was really, I had been an associate member of the Institute for probably, oh gosh, I got into the Institute in 93, I guess, 94. I started going to some of the North County chapter meetings, North County San Diego chapter meetings. That was when it was a residential group. And then we had the major group down in San Diego, which was more the MAI and the commercial type of side of things. And Escondido, which is where they held most of their meetings, was only about a 35, 40-minute ride from my small ranch. So it wasn't a big deal. And I'd go down there and was an associate member there. And I did that for many years. And at one time I considered getting my MAI only because I had partnered up with a good friend of mine who was in the world of eminent domain. And I had worked with him for about 10 years during the course of handling my own private party work. I was also supporting him. He and I were partners on a real estate transaction. So I was down in the office that we owned. And so I got involved with the eminent domain side of things. And I thought, well, maybe I'll try the MAI route. But the more I got into it, the more I saw what was going on with the eminent domain side, the more I realized I don't have that long of an attention span. And so I figured may not be my best fit. And so I just decided that I was going to stay with residential. And we had a little bit of a parting of the ways back in 2010, 2011. And then the more that my litigation work started to expand beyond just family law and estate work, I started running into some hiccups with one of the first things the attorneys would come out of their mouth when they'd call to interview me. They'd get my name from a referral. And if almost one of the first questions came out of their mouth was, "Are you a designated member?" And my standard response was, "I'm designated nuts, but no, I'm not a designated member." And after that happened for a little while, I thought, well, you can't beat them, you might as well join them. So I had a very, very fortuitous meeting, and I'm going to throw her name out there, and hopefully she doesn't mind this, but she works in Chicago for the Appraisal Institute, and her name is Carrie Van. And I met her in November of 2017 at the Appraisal Summit. And now that I've just said that, it's got something going in my head. So I'll pop that up in a minute. Yeah, I'll talk about it right now before I get off on a tangent and forget about it. For those of you that don't get out to conferences, and I know right now we're mixed up with COVID and we're mixed up with all this craziness going on, but when the world gets back to normal, or our new normal or whatever it is, and they figure out vaccines and treatment plans and the conferences start going again, I am surprised every time I go to a conference on the limited number of people that are there. The Appraisal Summit, which has done and I'm not getting any referral kickbacks for this, but the Appraisal Summit over all the years that I was going there always had good speakers, good booths, good exhibitors, good everything. And there was only 400 to maybe 500 people there. And out of a residential base of 50,000, 60,000 people, it just didn't make any sense. And being at those meetings can really lead you to some good situations. And for me, it was in November of 27, and I happened to walk by, and Carrie was manning the Appraisal Institute booth. And she said, "Hey, are you a designated member?" And I said, "Hey, no, I'm not." And she goes, "Well, would you be interested in talking to me?" And I said, "Well, if you're interested in listening to my story about the Institute, yeah, I'll be more than happy to talk to you." So I bent her ear for a couple of minutes, and she said, "Well, how about if I get you a picture of what we can do?" And I said, "Okay, I'm interested. Let's talk." So we sat down for probably 15 minutes in her booth, and she went over a couple things with me that kind of piqued my interest about how I could get through the program, and what it would entail, and that she would kind of keep tabs on it for me and help me through. And then I also, they got me in touch, and I apologize for this. I'm completely brain dead on what the term is, but I kind of got a sponsor or a mentor, if you will, out here in San Diego, a guy by the name of Brent Johnson that kind of helped out. He kind of helped guide me on some things as well. And so we went through the process, and I decided that at the time, let's see, this was 2017. So at the time I was 60, almost 64 years old. And I said, I ain't getting any younger, and I'm not going to waste 4 or 5 years of doing this one class at a year. I said, I got to do, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it all at one time and get it done. And fortunately, I'd taken some of the Institute classes previously, so I didn't have to retake some of the other lower level classes, but I did have to go through a series of classes which required me to travel. I flew up to San Francisco and got an opportunity to meet a great instructor up there by the name of Don Molitor Ginrich, with the valuation modeling class. And I took a couple of classes locally in San Diego, and I managed to bull my way through it. And then, but probably the best thing out of this entire process was taking the final 2 classes, the part 1 and part 2 of the old, the old comprehensive class, I guess, if you will. And I had an instructor by the name of Richard Dubay, who was phenomenal. And I had gotten some information from a couple of people. They were part of a mastermind group that I belonged to, and they had both told me, "Hey, get the information as soon as they will release it, and start working on it, and get through the questions, and start writing up this part of this report that you're going to need to do. It'll make your life a lot easier." And I thought, well, I'm not interested in staying up till 2:00 in the morning trying to get stuff done in a class that lasts for 10 days. And I thought I might as well get started on it. It was the best thing I ever did. And getting all the questions answered and getting up and running on it before I got to the class was phenomenal. And it took a lot of the pressure off of me, and it allowed me to be able to focus on what Rich Dubay was talking about in the class. And that ended up being probably, those 2 classes over that 10 days probably ended up being 2 of the better, if not best, appraisal classes I've taken. I learned more from that class than I probably did from anything else. And probably, to be fair, it was bringing everything together and making sense out of it. And I maybe that was the bits and pieces that I'd always seen it in little fragments, but I'd never seen it all together. And once I went through those 2 classes, it really did help me out a lot. And it helped me out with highest and best use.
Yes, I've read a little bit about highest and best use.
Yes, I'll put a bad plug in for your book. but it really did help. And it was so funny because as soon as I finished that class, I got back to the real world, and 5 or 6 days later, I ended up with a request on a 67-acre ranch that had all sorts of hair growing off of it. And I had to get involved with highest and best use. And so, I mean, it wasn't things that I wasn't familiar with. It just really helped solidify what I kind of thought I knew, but it helped kind of bring it to the forefront. And then my next step after getting the designation, I qualified, passed everything, got my logs and everything done. And then they did the interview, which I was a little nervous about because I'm thinking, holy moly, now I got to do an interview. This might not go well, but it ended up, I had a real good guy based out of the West Coast, and he drilled me a little bit and looked at some of my work and had some comments, and everything it worked out. So in December of 2018, after meeting Kerry Van in November of 2017, I had my SRA. But that wasn't the final piece of the puzzle. In order to help my marketing portion for what I wanted to do, which was to expand my litigation work, I discovered that I had one more class that I had to take because the Appraisal Institute has a special topics litigation certification that you can do. And I'd already taken 2 of the classes previously, and it was just general education. And I didn't realize it was going to actually help. But one of them was an expert witness class. The other was specializing in litigation. And then the third one was condemnation. And I had taken part of the condemnation class, but apparently not both sections of it. And they'd revise things as the world of the Appraisal Institute does from time to time. So I ended up having to fly up to Montana in May of last year in order to get my condemnation class. And I took it from a gentleman named Steve Roach. And for those of you out there that are either dabbling in condemnation or thinking about getting into it, find the class where Steve Roach is teaching and go take it, because he's top notch. He's been involved in condemnation for probably 30 years, and he knows it backwards, forwards, and all upside down. And he travels all around the country doing large litigation cases. So he's got good experience all over the place. And I highly recommend, if you're in that world or you're thinking about getting into that world, that you take a class from Steve. Another shameless plug, another referral fee I'm not going to get. But I finished that class up in May. My wife was a little worried about the fact that the class was in Montana, and she was a little worried that I might not come back from that class. And so when we got to the tail end of the class, I called her and told her I'd been talking with a real estate agent. I was thinking about buying some property up here, and I may not be back, which led to gnashing of teeth, and wanted to know what city I was actually in. So, but I did go home. So I got through that, and then had to go through some paperwork, and I got the litigation certification completed. And now I'm on the website for the Appraisal Institute. They have the normal participation members, designated members website, and then the associates and the affiliates. And they also have a litigation website. And I probably had 3 phone calls off of that website. And then I've had a greater deal of success in having attorneys engage me because I am designated. Where before it was always a good conversation, and then I didn't hear back from them. And now I'm hearing back from them. So I know in the world of lending, it really doesn't matter that much anymore because the AMCs have stepped into the middle of things, and that's really kind of thrown a monkey wrench into stuff. But there are regional banks out there and credit unions that do care, because I do get phone calls from them from time to time because I'm designated now. And so it's out there. It's not as abundant as it used to be with people as an interest in the SRA, but I'm glad I did it. It was kind of like getting my MBA. I'd been to high school and been to college and got my MBA and actually finally learned something. And so going through the SRA program really did help kind of get the blinders off of me and kind of expose my viewpoint on things. And I was pleased with that. And it turned out to be a good, so far it's been a beneficial situation to me.
Okay. So let's talk about filthy lucre for a minute. Now, you and I both know that getting a designation from just about anybody, especially the Institute, is neither quick nor inexpensive. So based on what you just said, am I safe in concluding that despite the upfront costs, literally not only money out of pocket, but airplane tickets and hotels and all that stuff. So what you're saying, again, tell me if I'm getting this wrong. So what you're saying is, even though it was neither easy nor inexpensive, you're glad you went to the time and the trouble and the crap and the hassle to get your SRA. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been in some classes. Gosh, I said recently. Actually, with COVID, it hasn't been recent. I guess towards the end of last year and early this year, I've been in a couple of classes where there were some young people in the room, or at least younger than me, and
Everybody's younger than we are, Brad.
thanks, Tim. So
You're younger than I am.
Yeah, had a conversation with a couple of them during break, and I told them, I said, look, I don't know where y'all are thinking about what you're doing, but if you're on the residential side of things, or even if you're on the commercial industrial side of things, get your designation, because it's going to segregate you from the rest of the population. And I think it's a benefit. It's like being an accountant all of your life or being a CPA. I know some accountants, my dad couldn't qualify to be a CPA because my dad didn't have formal college. Matter of fact, my dad dropped out of school in the 8th grade. He was born in 1921 and still alive. He'll be 99 in October. But my dad practiced in front of the IRS, but he was not a CPA because he didn't have college. He didn't have a college degree, so he couldn't be a CPA. So he had to fight every tooth and nail in order to do the things he did because he didn't carry the CPA moniker. And so I think it's in that same vein. You can be an appraiser, you can be a certified residential appraiser, and you can do very well. But if you put a designation after your name and it's something that's, not bought off the box tops of a Cheerios box or something, I think it can benefit you, especially with the transitions that are going on now, with where the market is at, with the transitions happening in the business. Nobody knows where all this is going. This COVID thing's turned everything upside down, and now we've got, a lot more situations with property owners and sellers helping us out with information and that type of thing. So it's, I don't know where this future is going to go with this business, but I guess if I did, I'd have the pick 6 lottery numbers, and you and I wouldn't be talking. I'd be out chasing cows and riding horses right now. But I think it's anytime you can separate yourself and delineate yourself as having gone the extra step, I think that makes a difference. And I think people will at least give you the initial review in order to figure out if you're the right person for them in whether it's personal property or not personal property, whether it's a personal appraisal request or it's a family law, or it's an estate situation or what have you, bankruptcies. And I just think that it helps separate you. And I think now more than ever, you need to be able to delineate yourself from the peers in your area. And, that maybe that includes a green certification, or it includes, I just finished a Zoom class yesterday, as a matter of fact, Wednesday, I guess it was, on rural valuations. So every little bit of that helps separate me from the other individuals that are out there that do the same kind of work that I do, because I've taken the time, and it shows up on my CV. And when people are talking to me and interviewing me and they want to know what my background is, I can tell them the different things that I've done. And I bet I just did an analysis, probably, I guess it was about a month and a half ago. And from the people that were contacting me to the people that I was actually getting work from, I was running around 85 to 90% of those people that have reached out to me. And that's a pretty high capture rate. And I am not the cheapest date in town. I have a basic philosophy. There's a certain baseline where I won't take my bunny slippers off, put my cowboy boots on, because I know what my hourly rate is. And I know what my average cost per appraisal is. And I know what my average fee per appraisal is on an annual basis. And I know how that operates. And I know what I need in order to make an hourly rate that is commensurate with what I believe I bring to the table. And I think if all of our peers out there did an analysis on that to understand what they contribute and what they do for the industry, I think it's important. I had a friend of mine back in Massachusetts who just knocked me out of my chair one day, made a comment to me, said, I just did a tally on all of my spreadsheet work. He said, I have appraised over $2.3 billion worth of real estate. Now, he's been in business for a long time, but all of a sudden I just stopped and I went, what? And then I started thinking, well, wait a minute, holy cow. And so I kind of started doing some math. I haven't gotten the final total yet, but I'm doing some math on it because I want to see kind of what I've appraised in my career from a total asset. But that's a lot of valuation, and that's a lot of our work and effort, and that's a lot of our knowledge, and we should be paid accordingly. And so I'm a real big believer in those favorite words of no, I won't work for that. And I think if more of us take that position and separate ourselves and get designated and take the specialty classes and take a class on solar and take the green class and do those kinds of things and put it on your resume or your CV, it separates you from the rest of the herd. And as the old saying goes, I'd rather be the lead dog in that pack than the dog back at the back, because the view never changes. So for me, it's, I think it was beneficial. It was blood, sweat, and tears, like you said, but it was beneficial. And I recommend it. I really do believe it's good for the residential appraiser. I think it's good for the commercial industrial appraiser. And I think it just gives you one more line of demarcation.
It's just one more asset that you've got that sets you apart from everybody else, right?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Brad, I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your candor, especially. And I look forward to the next time we can go to a conference. Otherwise, we have to meet by Zoom. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we've been with one of the movers and shakers of the real estate industry, Brad Bassi, out of Temecula, California. Brad, you were mentioning your website to me before we went on the air. How do folks get to your website?
My website is www.strawhatent.com.
www.strawhatenterprises.com. And what's your email address?
My email is pretty simple. I try to keep it simple because I forget stuff. So it's my first and last name run together. My first name is Brad, B-R-A-D. Last name is Bassi, B as in Bravo, A-S-S-I, at yahoo.com. There's no periods or spaces in between my first and last name. It's all just run together.
Brad Bassi at yahoo.com. That's a Yahoo. That's kind of a good one for a cowboy, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. And I've been called a Yahoo from time to time, so it fits.
Yeah, we're not going to go there. Most appraisers have probably been called a number of names over their careers. Brad, I appreciate it. It's always good to be with you. It's always good to see you. My best to you. My best to your family. Be safe and well, and I look forward to the next time we meet.
Tim, thank you so much. It's been an honor and a pleasure to be with you today. I greatly appreciate it. Y'all take good care over there.
Okay, Brad, you too. Thanks. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.